Reading an electrical diagram is a lot like reading a road map. You can get there, but sometimes you need directions. Let's look at the diagram for a Toyota Tacoma, the clutch start switch. Here's the diagram. The first thing to always do is identify the major components. We've got a battery, a starter relay, the ignition switch, the clutch start switch, which is your pedal on the floor, and we also have a clutch cancel start switch, which is a button on the dash. Those are the major components. Now, here's the diagram. The first thing let's look at is the ground circuit. There's 3 places in this diagram where you have ground entering the circuit. Now, I want you to notice too that this is a manual transmission path. That's what we're working on. So it's going to involve the clutch start switch. If you were working on an automatic transmission, the same diagram would apply, and it would involve the park neutral switch. But we're going to ignore that right now because we have a manual transmission. So this is the ground circuit. As is the case, most diagrams present the circuit at rest, which means the key is off and nothing is working. Now for the power circuit. When we identify the power circuit, here's where you have the power. It travels from the battery, goes as far as it can. This is your power circuit at rest, key off, nothing working. So, what do we do from there? I want you to notice some things. There's some switches here. There's 4 switches. Take a close look at them. I want you to notice that these are single pole switches, which means there's only a single contact point. So when the switch goes from open to closed, it's only going to touch one single point. Now look at this switch. This is in the ignition switch. Now when this switch goes from open to closed, it's a double pole, which means you could actually touch ignition and start at the same time. There's 2 contact points that can be touched in that switch. It's a 2 contact double pole switch. Let's turn the key on and see what happens. When you see that, power goes through the ignition switch, travels through a fuse and goes down to the clutch start cancel switch. Power also travels down to the starter relay. At neither point is there a ground, so the power just sits there waiting for a ground. Where do we get our ground? Well, we've got to step on the clutch. When you step on the clutch, the contact closes. It sends ground to both of the paths. You can see that it hits the starter relay. The ground hits the power, which means the electromagnet is going to energize in the starter relay, pull the contacts close, and when the contacts close, it'll send power down to the starter, and the starter will run. Nothing happened in the clutch start cancel switch because ground never made a contact there. It starts, and you can let the key go to the run position, and when you do that, you lose power to the starter relay. When you let off the clutch, you lose ground to the starter relay. It just returns. Now the vehicle keeps on running because of this other feed, which we're not going to concentrate on. We're looking at the start switch. So what does this switch do? Let's turn the key on and see. When you turn the key on, power goes over to this switch. Now it's called the clutch start cancel switch. The clutch start, but let's cancel that clutch start and change it to a button start, a push button start on the dashboard. So the clutch start cancel switch just cancels the clutch start aspect and changes it to a button start. Push the button on the dashboard. That's located right here. Now when you push that button, the contact will come and it will make a path for ground. There's 3 things that happened. They all happen at the same time, but the first thing we're going to look at is the LEDs light up. These are light emitting diodes to tell you that that switch is on. That's on the dashboard. Now the other thing is the electromagnet is energized. It pulls that contact closed and allows ground to take its path. Now ground goes over to the starter relay, but there's no power there, so the starter can't start. So now you turn your switch to the start position, and when you do that, power travels down, the electromotor energizes the relay, that energizes starter, and the car starts.